Hello, my dear listeners. My name is Vivian, and I am here with you today. Before I begin, I want to ask you something. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Now, let me tell you my story. And I warn you, it is a long one. But every detail matters. Every moment led to the next. And I want you to understand exactly how it all unfolded. People always thought I was the gentle one, the woman who never raised her voice, the one who smiled through every difficulty and kept the family together without complaint. For 51 years of marriage, maybe I was exactly that person. I was the wife who had dinner ready at 6, the grandmother who always had fresh cookies in the jar. I was the woman who said yes when it was easier than saying no. The woman who believed that keeping peace was the same as being happy. But being gentle does not mean being weak, and being silent does not mean being blind. I learned this the hard way. I learned this when everything I thought was solid turned out to be built on sand. My name is Vivian Catherine Moore. Most people call me Viv. I am 74 years old, a retired librarian from Portland, Maine. I spent 28 years working at the Portland Public Library, most of that time in the reference section, helping people find answers to questions they could not solve on their own. It is strange how life works. I spent decades helping other people find solutions, and then I had to learn how to find my own. This is the story of how I watched my entire world crumble, piece by piece, and then rebuilt it with my own two hands. This is the story of how I discovered that the man I slept beside for 51 years was a stranger. And this is the story of how I found myself again after I thought I had disappeared completely. Thomas and I started our life together in the spring of 1974. It feels like a different lifetime now. I was 23 years old, fresh out of library school, working my first job at a small-town library in Brunswick. Thomas was 25. Just starting out in investment banking, full of ambition and charm. We met at a community theater production of our town. He was playing the stage manager, and I was helping with costumes and props. I remember watching him on stage, so confident, so at ease with himself. He had a way of making everyone in the room feel like they mattered. After the final performance, there was a cast party. Thomas found me in the corner of the room, holding a glass of wine I was not drinking, feeling out of place among all these theatrical people. He sat down next to me and said, "You are the costume person, right? You did an incredible job. Every detail was perfect." I was surprised he had noticed. I was surprised he was talking to me at all. We talked for 2 hours that night, about books, about Maine, about what we wanted from our lives. He told me he wanted to build something significant. He wanted to be successful enough that his children would never have to worry about money the way he had growing up. His father had been a mill worker who got laid off when Thomas was 14. The family had struggled. Thomas had worked his way through college. He was determined to create security. I understood that. My own father had been a postal worker. We had never been poor, but we had never been comfortable either. Security seemed like a reasonable thing to want. We married in December of that same year. Small ceremony at my parents' church in Brunswick. My mother made my dress. Thomas's brother was the best man. We had 28 people at the wedding. We honeymooned in Bar Harbor for 3 days, and then we came back and started our real life together. We had 2 daughters. Sophia was born in 1976, and Rebecca followed in 1978. We raised them in the same house on Maple Crest Avenue, where I still live today. The house where all of this eventually unfolded. The house was a beautiful old Victorian that we bought in 1975. It needed work when we purchased it, but Thomas saw potential. He always had an eye for that. 5 bedrooms, high ceilings, original woodwork, a wraparound porch, and a garden that had been neglected for years, but that I brought back to life over time. There was also a library on the 2nd floor, a room with built-in shelves and a window seat that looked out over the garden. That became my favorite room in the house. I filled those shelves with books over 3 decades, classic novels, poetry, history, biographies. I kept a reading chair by the window where I would sit in the evenings after the girls went to bed. The garden became my other sanctuary. I planted roses, hydrangeas, peonies, delphiniums. I learned about soil composition and pruning techniques. I spent hours out there in the spring and summer, my hands in the dirt, watching things grow. Thomas used to joke that I cared more about my roses than I cared about him. He said it with a smile, but looking back now, I wonder if there was truth underneath the joke. When the real estate market climbed in the years leading up to 2020, the house was appraised at $4.2 million. I remember the day the appraiser came. I remember thinking, we own this. We paid off the mortgage in 2005. This is ours. This is what we built together. The house was ours, or at least that is what I believed for all those years. That is what I believed right up until the moment I discovered it was not. Thomas had worked in investment banking his entire career. He started at a small firm in Portland, worked his way up, and eventually became a senior partner. He was brilliant with numbers. He could look at a balance sheet and see opportunities that other people missed. He had a way of explaining complicated financial structures that made them sound simple and safe. People trusted him. I trusted him. I understood this about him the same way you understand the seasons. They come, they go, you accept them as part of the natural order. I never questioned Thomas's financial decisions. He handled all of that. I handled the household, the children, the social calendar, the garden. We had our separate domains, and they seemed to work together smoothly. Looking back now, I can see how naive that was, how dangerous it is to hand over an entire aspect of your life to someone else without any oversight. But at the time, it seemed normal. It seemed like what married couples did. He was good at finance. I was good at other things. We each played to our strengths. The warning signs started appearing about 3 years before everything fell apart. It began in the spring of 2020, right as the pandemic was starting. The world was shutting down, and everyone was afraid and uncertain. Thomas started working from home, full-time. Before that, he had gone to the office every day. Suddenly, we were both home all the time, occupying the same space in a way we had not done since the early years of our marriage. At first, it was fine. We adjusted. We established routines. Thomas set up an office in the spare bedroom. I continued my routines in the kitchen and garden. We had lunch together most days. In some ways, it felt like a second honeymoon, quality time we had not had in years. But then small things started to change. Thomas began taking phone calls outside. He would see his phone ring, glance at the screen, and then step out onto the porch, or walk out to his car in the driveway. For a man who used to conduct all his business on speakerphone in the dining room, who used to narrate his deals like a sports commentator, this was unusual. The first time I noticed it, I asked him about it. "Why are you taking calls outside?" I said. "Am I being too loud? Am I disturbing you?" No, he said quickly. Some of these calls involve confidential client information. I do not want to risk you overhearing something you should not. It is a privacy issue." That made sense. That seemed reasonable, so I didn't push it. But it kept happening, more and more often. Several times a day, the phone would ring, and Thomas would look at it and excuse himself. Sometimes he would be gone for 10 minutes, sometimes for half an hour. Once, I walked out to the garden and saw him standing by his car, his voice low and intense. When he saw me, he wrapped up the call quickly and came inside. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," he said. "Just client issues. You know how it is?" I nodded, but I did not know how it was. I had no idea what his days actually looked like. I had no idea who he was talking to or what he was discussing. I had spent 50 years trusting that when Thomas said something was fine, it was fine. I told myself he was being considerate. Maybe he thought his business calls would bore me. Maybe he was trying to give me space. I made excuses because making excuses was easier than asking hard questions. Then the money began to shift. We had always maintained a joint checking account for household expenses. Both our paychecks, when I was still working, went into that account. After I retired in 2018, my pension went into that account. We paid bills from it. We used it for groceries, home repairs, vacations, gifts for the grandchildren. It was our shared financial life made visible. We also each had separate retirement accounts. Thomas had his 401k from his firm, and I had my library pension and a small IRA. Those were separate, but the joint account was ours together. In the summer of 2020, Thomas mentioned casually over breakfast one morning that he was reorganizing some of our financial holdings. He used phrases like portfolio rebalancing and strategic asset allocation and tax efficiency optimization. He said his financial advisor had recommended consolidating some accounts and restructuring our estate plan to minimize tax liability. He spoke in that calm, confident way he had, the way that made you feel like everything was under control, like there was nothing to worry about because he had thought of everything. I was spreading jam on my toast. I remember this detail clearly. Strawberry jam from the farmer's market. I was spreading it carefully, right to the edges, the way I always do. "Okay," I said. "Do I need to do anything?" "I will let you know if I need you to sign anything," he said. "But mostly I will handle it." I nodded. I took a bite of my toast. I should not have simply nodded. I should have asked questions. What accounts are we consolidating? Why? What does this mean for our finances? Can I see the paperwork? But I did not ask any of those things. I trusted him. I had trusted him for 46 years at that point. Why would I stop now? Our daughter Sophia was the first person to sense something was wrong. Sophia was our older daughter, 45 years old at the time, living in Portland with her husband and their 2 children. She worked as a social worker for the state, helping families navigate the child welfare system. She had a keen eye for when something was off in family dynamics. It was her job to notice. She came to visit us for Thanksgiving in 2021. The pandemic restrictions had eased enough that we could gather as a family again. Sophia and her family came, and Rebecca drove up from Boston with her family. We had 14 people around the table. It should have been joyful. It should have been warm and full of laughter. But Sophia noticed something. After dinner, while Thomas was in the living room with the grandchildren and Rebecca's husband was helping clean up, Sophia pulled me aside in the kitchen. She looked at me with concern in her eyes. "Mom," she said quietly, "is everything okay with Dad?" I was surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "He barely spoke to any of us when we arrived," she said. "He hardly said anything during dinner. And he keeps checking his phone like he is waiting for something important." I looked toward the living room, where I could see Thomas sitting in his chair, his phone in his hand, his attention somewhere else. "He has been stressed with work," I said. "You know how he gets." Sophia looked at me for a long moment. She had her father's eyes, dark brown and sharp. "Mom, he is retired. What work stress could he have?" I had not thought of that. Thomas had officially retired from his firm in 2019. He still consulted occasionally, still managed some of his own investments, but he didn't have the daily pressure of clients and deals anymore. So what was he stressed about? "I do not know," I admitted, "but I am sure he is fine. He does not like to talk about what is bothering him." Sophia did not look convinced, but she dropped it. We went back to serving pie and making coffee and pretending everything was normal. But that conversation stayed with me. I started watching Thomas more carefully after that. I started noticing the little things I had been overlooking. He was distant, not just with me, but with everyone. When the grandchildren came to visit, he barely engaged with them. He used to get down on the floor and play with them, build block towers and read stories. Now he stayed in his chair, distracted, somewhere else. He was sleeping poorly. I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and find his side of the bed empty. I would get up and find him downstairs in his office, staring at his computer screen, his face illuminated by the blue light. "Cannot sleep?" I would ask. "Just checking some things," he would say. "Go back to bed." I would go back to bed. I would lie there in the dark and wonder what things he was checking at 3 in the morning. He was also irritable in a way he had not been before. Small things would set him off. The newspaper not being where he expected it, dinner being 10 minutes late, the television being too loud. He would snap at me and then apologize an hour later, saying he was tired, saying he had not meant it. I told myself it was aging. He was 72 years old. Maybe this was just what happened when men got older. They got grumpy. They got less patient. I told myself this for another year. I made excuses because I did not want to face the possibility that something was fundamentally wrong. Because if something was fundamentally wrong, that meant I would have to do something about it. And I did not know what to do. I did not even know what the problem was. The exact moment when I knew something had fundamentally changed happened on a Wednesday afternoon in October 2022. It was a beautiful fall day. The maple tree in the front yard was brilliant red and gold. I had spent the morning raking leaves. I came inside around 2 o'clock to make some tea. I walked into Thomas's home office to ask if he wanted a cup. The door was open. He was sitting at his desk, his laptop in front of him, his back to the door. He had headphones on. He did not hear me come in. I want to be very clear about that. I was simply there, and the screen was facing me, and I could see it from where I stood in the doorway. There was a legal document open on the screen. It looked official, formal letterhead, dense paragraphs of text. My name was on it. I saw it clearly. Vivian Catherine Moore. And our address, 47 Maple Crest Avenue, Portland, Maine. And there was another name I had never seen before, Natalie Brennan. She was listed as a co-trustee on something called the Moore Family Revocable Trust. Something calculating. He closed the laptop immediately. "Vivian," he said. He took off his headphones. "I did not hear you come in." They set down the teacup I had been holding. My hand was shaking slightly. "I was just bringing you tea," I said. "I saw a document on your screen. What is the Moore Family Revocable Trust?" He stood up from his desk. His face was completely calm now, neutral, controlled. "It is part of the estate restructuring I mentioned. Remember, last year?" "I remember you said you were restructuring things," I said, "but you did not mention a trust. And who is Natalie Brennan? Why is her name on our family trust?" "She is a financial consultant I hired," he said. His voice did not waver at all. It was steady and reasonable. "She specializes in estate planning for high-net-worth individuals. She has been helping me organize our assets to minimize estate taxes when we pass. Her role is purely administrative." He said it so smoothly, so convincingly, like it was the most normal thing in the world to have a stranger named as co-trustee on your family trust without telling your wife. "Oh," I said. I did not know what else to say. The explanation sounded plausible. Thomas knew about these things. I did not. If he said this was normal, it was probably normal. "I should have explained it to you more clearly," he said. He smiled at me. That warm smile he had, the one that used to make me feel safe. "I know all this financial and legal stuff is boring. I did not want to overwhelm you with details. But it's all standard estate planning. Nothing to worry about." "Okay," I said. I left the office and went back to the kitchen. I made my tea. I sat at the kitchen table and drank it. But something had shifted inside me. It was not anger. Not yet. It was something quieter and more persistent. Doubt. The first real doubt I had felt about my husband in 51 years of marriage. I kept thinking about the way he had closed that laptop so quickly, the way his face had changed when he saw me, the smooth explanation that followed. It all felt practiced, rehearsed, like he had been prepared for this conversation, like he had known I might ask these questions someday, and he had his answers ready. And why had I never heard of Natalie Brennan before? If she was helping with our estate planning, would Thomas not have mentioned her at some point? Would he not have said, "I am meeting with our estate planner today," or "Our consultant thinks we should do this"? But he had never mentioned her, not once. I was sure of that. I tried to let it go. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. Thomas had never given me reason to doubt him before. We had a good marriage, a solid marriage. We had built a life together. We had raised 2 wonderful daughters. We had grandchildren. We had this beautiful home. Why would he deceive me now? What would be the point? I told myself these things. I almost convinced myself. But the doubt had taken root. And once doubt takes root, it grows. I started paying more attention after that. Not in an obvious way. I did not confront Thomas again. I did not demand to see documents or ask more questions. But I watched. I noticed. I noticed that the phone calls outside were happening more frequently. Sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. I noticed that Thomas was spending more time in his office with the door closed. I noticed that when mail came from his financial advisor or his attorney, he took it straight to his office without opening it in front of me. I noticed that he had started traveling more, short trips, 1 or 2 nights. He said they were consulting jobs, former clients who needed his expertise. He would pack a small bag and drive to Boston or Hartford or New York. He would come back 2 days later and tell me about the meetings, about the advice he had given, about how good it felt to still be useful. I noticed all of these things, and I stored them away in my mind. I did not know what they added up to yet, but I knew they added up to something. 6 weeks after I saw that document on Thomas's computer, everything changed. It was a cold Monday morning in early December. Gray sky, frost on the grass. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw a sedan I did not recognize. A man got out. He was wearing a suit and carrying a folder. He walked up to the front door and rang the bell. I answered it. The man asked if I was Vivian Catherine Moore. I said yes. He handed me the folder and said, "You have been served." Then he walked back to his car and drove away. I stood in the doorway, holding the folder. My heart was beating fast. Served? Served with what? I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, court documents. The header said Superior Court of Cumberland County, State of Maine. The case name was Thomas Alexander Moore v. Vivian Catherine Moore. My husband was suing me. I stood there reading the first page, trying to make sense of the words. Complaint for partition and declaratory judgment regarding property rights. Plaintiff Thomas Alexander Moore seeks judicial determination of sole ownership interest in the property located at 47 Maple Crest Avenue, Portland, Maine. He was suing me for the house. Our house. The house we had lived in for 47 years. My hands were shaking now, making the pages tremble. Thomas's complaint claimed that the house on Maple Crest Avenue had been purchased primarily with his premarital assets and income from his career in investment banking. It claimed that my contribution to the acquisition and maintenance of the property had been minimal and did not constitute an ownership interest. It claimed that while my name appeared on the deed, this had been done as a courtesy and for estate planning purposes, but did not reflect the true ownership of the property. The complaint went on for 12 pages, detailed financial arguments, references to Maine property law, citations of previous court cases. This was not something Thomas had thrown together quickly. This was sophisticated legal work. This had been planned. I read it all the way through once. Then I walked into the living room and sat down on the bench by the front door, the same bench where I used to help my grandchildren put on their boots in the winter. I sat there holding these papers, and I made myself breathe. How long had he been planning this? The complaint referenced documents going back to 2019, financial records, property appraisals, legal consultations. He had been building this case for at least 3 years, probably longer. While I was gardening and making dinner and visiting with the grandchildren, my husband had been constructing a legal argument to take away my home. I do not know how long I sat there, an hour maybe longer. At some point, I heard Thomas's car in the driveway. He had been out, presumably running errands or meeting someone. I heard him moving around in the kitchen. He called out, "Vivian, are you home?" I did not answer. I could not make my voice work. He came into the living room and saw me sitting there with the papers. He stopped in the doorway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said very calmly, "So you got the papers?" "Yes," I managed to say. He came into the room and sat down in the armchair across from me. He leaned back, relaxed, like we were about to have a normal conversation about normal things. "I know this is difficult," he said, "but it is necessary. My attorneys and I have been working on this for some time. The situation with the house is complicated, legally speaking. We need a court to clarify the ownership structure." I stared at him. "Thomas, this is our home. We bought it together. We have lived here for 47 years. My name is on the deed." "Your name is on the deed, yes," he said, "but that does not reflect the economic reality of the situation. I purchased this house with money I had earned and saved before we were married. I have maintained it with my income throughout our marriage. You contributed to the household in other ways, but not financially in any significant sense." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so cold, like he was explaining a business transaction. "Thomas," I said, my voice was shaking, "what are you talking about? We bought this house together. We saved for the down payment together. My salary went into our account." "Your salary was minimal," he said, "a librarian's income. It barely covered the groceries and utilities. Every major expense, every improvement to this property came from my earnings." I felt like I had been punched. Minimal. He had called my life's work minimal. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Why now? After all these years?" He sighed, like I was being difficult. Like I was forcing him to explain something obvious. "Because I am planning for the future," he said. "I am 73 years old, Vivian. I need to get my affairs in order. This house is my primary asset. I need clear legal title to it for estate planning purposes. This is not personal. It is practical." "It feels very personal," I said. "You should get a lawyer. I'm sure we can work something out that is fair to both of us. But I need you to understand something, Vivian. This process is going to take time, but you are going to lose. The law is on my side. The financial records are on my side. You are going to lose this house." He started to walk toward the kitchen, then turned back. "And Vivian, if you make this difficult, if you try to turn Sophia and Rebecca against me, if you start calling them with your version of things, I will make sure you regret it. I have the means to tie up your access to this family for years. You will not be welcome at holidays. You will not be at the grandchildren's birthdays. I will make sure Sophia and Rebecca understand that all of this trouble, all of this family turmoil, is because you would not be reasonable." He said it so calmly, like he was discussing the weather. "I have spent years building relationships with our daughters," he continued. "I have been there for them financially and emotionally. They trust me. They respect me. If it comes down to choosing sides, Vivian, they are going to choose me, and you are going to end up alone." He walked away. I heard him in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator, pouring himself a drink, like nothing had happened, like he had not just threatened to destroy my entire life. I sat there holding those papers, and something happened inside me in that moment. Something crystallized. It was not rage, not yet. It was clarity. The particular clarity that comes when you finally stop making excuses for someone else's behavior. When you finally see them for exactly who they are. For 51 years I had believed Thomas loved me. I had believed we were partners. I had believed we were building a life together. But sitting there in that moment, holding those court papers, listening to him moving around in the kitchen like nothing had happened, I understood the truth. He had never seen me as a partner. He had seen me as an employee, someone who performed services in exchange for room and board. Someone useful, but ultimately disposable. And now that he did not need those services anymore, he was letting me go. That night I did not sleep. I lay in the bed we had shared for 51 years, and I stared at the ceiling. But I was not thinking about my feelings. I was thinking about my situation. This is what librarians do. We organize information. We break down complex problems into manageable pieces. We find solutions. I started making a mental inventory, not of my emotions, but of facts. The house on Maple Crest Avenue was valued at $4.2 million. Thomas was claiming it was his, by right of original purchase and his earnings. I had no significant income beyond my librarian's pension, which was $2,400 a month, and my Social Security, which was another $1,800 a month. That was $4,200 total. In Portland, Maine, that would barely cover a modest apartment and basic living expenses. My name was on the deed. It had been since 1975. But Thomas's lawyers were apparently arguing that the deed had been modified through an estate planning process, an amendment that I had signed. I got out of bed at 3:30 in the morning. I went to the file cabinet in the small office I kept on the second floor. I kept all of our important papers there, birth certificates, insurance policies, tax returns, legal documents. I found the estate planning documents from 2018. There was a whole folder of them. I pulled it out and took it to my desk. I turned on the lamp and I started reading. I had signed these documents. I remembered the occasion now. It was November of 2018. Thomas had sat me down at the kitchen table one Saturday afternoon. He had said our attorney was updating our estate plan. He said it was important to have everything organized properly, especially as we got older. He said the attorney had reviewed everything and it was all standard. He had presented me with a stack of papers. There must have been 15 or 20 pages. He walked me through them quickly. This is the updated will. This is the healthcare proxy. This is the power of attorney. This is the trust document. Sign here, initial here, sign here. The whole process took maybe 20 minutes. I signed where he indicated. I trusted my husband of 49 years. I was a librarian, not a lawyer. Why would I question him? I sat at my desk at 3:30 in the morning, and I read every single word of those documents for the first time. What I found made my stomach turn. Buried in the language of the trust document was a clause that reclassified our home. The house on Maplecrest Avenue was designated as an asset held in the Moore Family Revocable Trust. Thomas was named as the sole managing trustee with full discretionary authority. My interest in the property was reduced to what the document called a limited beneficial interest. I had to read that phrase 3 times to understand what it meant. A limited beneficial interest meant I could live in the house. That was it. I had the right to occupy the property. But I had no ownership rights. I could not sell it. I could not borrow against it. I could not transfer it. I had no say in what happened to it. And the document went further. It stated that my limited beneficial interest could be terminated under certain specified conditions. I found the section that outlined those conditions. The managing trustee, meaning Thomas, had the authority to terminate my interest if he determined it was necessary for tax purposes, estate preservation, or proper asset management. In other words, Thomas could kick me out of my own home whenever he decided it was convenient. He had engineered this. 4 years ago, he had sat beside me at our kitchen table while I signed away my home, and he had said nothing. He had told me it was standard estate planning. He had smiled at me. He had probably kissed me on the cheek afterward and thanked me for being so cooperative. I sat at that desk as the sky began to lighten outside the window. I felt sick. I felt betrayed in a way I had not known was possible. But underneath the sickness and the betrayal, I felt something else. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, determined kind. The kind that burns steady and does not go out. Thomas thought he had been so clever. He thought he had built the perfect trap. Legal documents signed by my own hand. A 3-year head start. Expensive attorneys. Financial records that supported his narrative. He thought I would be overwhelmed. He thought I would be too confused, too scared, too old to fight back. He thought I would accept whatever settlement he offered and disappear quietly. He was wrong. The fear was real. I will not pretend it was not. I was 74 years old. I had a small retirement account with about $210,000 in it. That was my entire savings. Everything else we owned was joint or in Thomas's name. My pension would keep me alive, but it would not house me, not in Portland where rents were climbing every year, not anywhere I could afford to stay close to Sophia and Rebecca and my grandchildren. If I lost this house, I would lose everything. My community, my garden, my proximity to my family. I would be an old woman starting over with nothing in a world that does not value old women. But here is what I also knew. Sitting at that desk at 3:30 in the morning, reading those documents in the blue light before dawn, I knew that I had spent 51 years making things work. I had managed a public library for 28 years. I had organized literacy programs with no budget. I had negotiated with city councils for funding. I had mediated disputes between staff members who hated each other. I had helped patrons navigate complex research questions. I had taught myself how to use new computer systems every time the technology changed. I knew how to break down a problem into smaller pieces. I knew how to research. I knew how to find the information I needed. I knew how to ask the right questions. I was afraid, and I was going to act anyway. The first decision I made, sitting there at my desk as the sun came up, was to tell no one in the family. Not yet. Thomas had already made it clear he would use Sophia and Rebecca as leverage. He would turn them against me if I gave him the chance. If I called them now, before I had any legal standing, before I had any plan, I would be handing Thomas information and time. He would call them an hour after I did. He'd be calm and reasonable. He would say I was upset and confused. He would say he was just trying to handle some complicated financial matters, and I was making it into something it was not. He would position himself as the rational one, and me as the emotional one. And they might believe him. Because that had been our dynamic for 51 years. Thomas was the one who handled the serious matters. I was the one who baked cookies and tended the garden. I could not risk that. Not yet. The second decision was to find my own attorney. Not someone Thomas knew. Not someone from our social circle. Not someone who might have any connection to him or his firm or his attorneys. Someone completely separate. I sat at my desk and tried to think of who that might be. I did not know any attorneys personally. Thomas had always handled any legal matters we needed. He had his attorney for business issues and estate planning. I had never needed one of my own. But then I remembered something. A woman named Janet Kerrigan. She had been a regular patron at the Portland Public Library years ago, back when I was still working. She used to come in every Tuesday afternoon to use the legal research databases. We had talked many times. She was studying for the bar exam while working full-time as a paralegal. She was in her 30s then, ambitious and determined. She told me about the cases she was working on, and I helped her find case law and study materials. She passed the bar exam in 2008. I remember because she came into the library to tell me. She brought me flowers and a thank you card. The card said, "Thank you for all your help. I could not have done this without access to these resources, and without your guidance. If you ever need anything, please call me." I had kept that card. I keep most cards people give me. I went to my desk drawer and found it in a folder with other notes and cards from over the years. I looked at it in the morning light. The card had her phone number written at the bottom. That was 14 years ago. She might not even be practicing anymore. But it was the only lead I had. At 9 o'clock that morning, while Thomas was still asleep, I went out to my car with my cell phone. I did not want to make this call from inside the house. I sat in the driver's seat, and I dialed the number on the card. A receptionist answered. "Kerrigan and Associates, how may I direct your call?" Kerrigan and Associates. She had her own firm. That was good. "I would like to speak with Janet Kerrigan," I said. "My name is Vivian Moore. I am calling about a legal matter." "Is this regarding an existing case?" the receptionist asked. "No," I said. "This is a new matter. It is urgent and confidential." "Hold, please." I waited. My heart was beating fast. What if she did not take family law cases? What if she was too busy? But then a voice came on the line. "Mrs. Moore? Vivian Moore?" "Yes," I said. "This is Janet Kerrigan. Of course I remember you. You helped me so much when I was studying for the bar. How are you?" "I am not well," I said. My voice cracked slightly. "I need help." "What is going on?" Her voice shifted, professional, focused. "My husband filed a lawsuit against me," I said. "He is trying to take our home. He claims it belongs only to him. I need an attorney. I need help. Can you come to my office today?" "Yes," I said. "Can you come at 2 o'clock?" "Yes." "Do not bring any documents with you," she said. "Not yet. We will talk first. And Mrs. Moore, do not discuss this with your husband. Do not tell him you are coming to see me. Do you understand?" "I understand. I will see you at 2. I sat in my car after the call ended. I was shaking. But it was not fear. It was something else. Relief maybe. Or determination. I had taken the first step. I had found an attorney. I was not alone anymore. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community. so we can bring more truthful stories for you. I drove to Janet Kerrigan's office at 1:30. I wanted to be early. I needed time to collect myself before the meeting. Her office was in a converted house in the West End of Portland, a beautiful old Victorian, not unlike my own home, that had been renovated into office space. There was a small parking lot behind the building. I parked and sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing, trying to calm my racing heart. At 2 o'clock exactly, I walked into the reception area. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled at me. "Mrs. Moore?" "Yes. Janet is ready for you. Right this way." She led me down a hallway to a corner office. Janet Kerrigan stood up from behind her desk when I entered. She was 59 now, her hair shorter than I remembered, gray at the temples, but the same sharp intelligence in her eyes. "Mrs. Moore," she said, coming around the desk to shake my hand. "It is so good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Please sit down." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. I sat. She sat back down and folded her hands on the desk in front of her. "Tell me what is happening," she said. And I did. I told her everything. I told her about the court papers I had been served, about Thomas's claim that the house was his alone, about the estate documents I had signed in 2018 without understanding them, about the trust that gave me only a limited beneficial interest, about Thomas's threats to turn my daughters against me if I fought him, about Natalie Brennan, the woman whose name I had seen on his computer screen. I told her all of it. It took nearly 45 minutes. Janet listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, reviewing her notes. Then she looked up at me. "Mrs. Moore, I want to be honest with you. This is not a hopeless situation, but it was deliberately constructed to look like one." "I know," I said. "Your husband had professional help," Janet continued. "This is sophisticated legal work. The trust document, the way it was structured, the timing of when you signed it. This was not something he did on his own. He had an attorney help him build this." "Can we challenge it?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "The 2018 trust document has potential vulnerabilities. The circumstances under which you signed it, your lack of independent legal counsel, the way the documents were presented to you, these could constitute what the law calls undue influence, or even fraud." She leaned forward slightly. "If we can demonstrate that you signed those documents without truly understanding what you were signing, and that the terms were materially different from what you were told, we have grounds to challenge the trust and have it set aside." "What do I need to prove?" I asked. "We need to show several things," Janet said. "First, that you did not have independent legal advice when you signed the documents. Second, that your husband did not fully disclose what the documents actually did. Third, that you reasonably relied on his characterization of what you were signing. And fourth, that the result is unconscionable, meaning it is so one-sided and unfair that no reasonable person would have agreed to it if they understood what they were agreeing to." She tapped her pen on her legal pad. "From what you have told me, we can make all of those arguments. But there is another avenue as well." "What is that?" I asked. "Maine is not a community property state, but it does have strong marital property laws," Janet said. "Assets acquired during a marriage are generally presumed to be marital property, regardless of which spouse earned the money or whose name is on the title. There are exceptions for premarital assets and inheritances, but even those can become marital property if they are commingled with marital assets over time." She looked at me directly. "We need to trace the actual financial history of that house. Where did the money come from for the down payment? Where did the money come from for the mortgage payments, for the renovations and improvements, for the property taxes and maintenance over 47 years? If we can show that marital funds were used, that both of your earnings went into that property over the course of your marriage, then it is marital property regardless of what the trust document says." I felt hope for the first time since I had been served those papers. "Can we prove that?" "If the records exist, we can prove it," Janet said. "Do you have access to old financial documents? Bank statements, tax returns, mortgage records?" "I have boxes of files in my attic," I said. "I save everything. I have tax returns going back to the 1980s. I have bank statements, canceled checks, receipts." "Perfect," Janet said. She smiled slightly. Librarians make excellent clients. You are organized. What about Natalie Brennan? I asked. Why is she involved in our family trust? Janet's expression became more serious. That is a very good question, and it is one we are going to investigate thoroughly. If there is another woman involved in your husband's financial affairs, that raises additional questions and potentially additional legal issues. She pulled out a retainer agreement and slid it across the desk to me. I need to be honest with you about the cost. Family law litigation can be expensive, especially when it involves high-value assets and complex financial matters. My retainer is $30,000. That will cover the initial work, filing our response to the lawsuit, conducting discovery, possibly hiring a forensic accountant. If the case goes to trial, there will be additional costs. $30,000. That was a significant portion of my savings, but I had $210,000 in my IRA. I had to protect the house that was worth $4.2 million. The math was clear. I will pay it, I said, whatever it costs. I am not going to let him take my home. Janet nodded. Then we will fight this together. I signed the retainer agreement right there. Janet explained the next steps. She would file a formal response to Thomas's lawsuit, denying his claims and asserting my ownership rights. She would also file discovery requests, demanding that Thomas produce all financial documents related to the house, all documents related to the trust, and all documents related to his business entities and accounts. This will tell your husband that you have representation, Janet said. He will know you are not going quietly. That might prompt him to reach out with a settlement offer. Do not accept anything without talking to me first, and do not discuss the case with him. If he tries to talk to you about it, tell him to contact me. I will, I said. One more thing, Janet said. You mentioned that your husband threatened to turn your daughters against you. I want you to document any communication from him that could be considered harassment or intimidation. Save text messages, emails, voicemails. Screenshot everything. That kind of behavior is relevant in these cases. I left Janet's office at 4 o'clock. I sat in my car in the parking lot and I cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from having someone on my side, from not being alone anymore. Then I dried my tears and drove home. I had work to do. That evening, Thomas was home for dinner. He acted like nothing had happened, like he had not threatened me, like there were not court papers sitting on my desk upstairs. He asked what I had made for dinner. I told him chicken and vegetables. He nodded and poured himself a scotch. We ate in near silence. After dinner, he went to his office and closed the door. I went upstairs to my office and started going through my files. If Janet needed financial records, I was going to find every single one. I pulled boxes down from the closet. I had decades of tax returns, organized by year. I had bank statements going back to when we first opened our joint account in 1974. I had the original mortgage documents from when we bought the house in 1975. I had receipts for the major renovation we did in 22. I had property tax records. I had home insurance policies. I spent 3 hours that night photographing documents with my phone and uploading them to a secure folder that Janet had given me access to. I organized them by category: purchase documents, mortgage payments, renovation records, tax records, bank statements. I was a librarian. Organization was what I did. If Thomas thought he could bury me in paperwork and legal complexity, he had forgotten who he was dealing with. The next day, while Thomas was out, I continued my research. I went up to the attic and found more boxes. One of them had old checkbook registers from the 1970s and 80s. Before everything was online, I used to balance our checkbook by hand every month. I had saved all of the registers. I looked through them and found something important. In 1975, the year we bought the house, I found the entries for our savings account deposits. My salary from the library, small as it was, went into that account. Thomas's salary from his first job at the investment firm went into that account. We saved together for 2 years to build up enough for the down payment. I photographed every page. This was evidence that the down payment came from joint savings, not from Thomas's premarital assets. I also found records from the 2002 renovation. We had added a second bathroom and expanded the kitchen. The project cost $78,000. I found the contractor's invoices, and I found something else. A bank statement showing a deposit of $55,000 into our joint account in January 2002, with a note that said, Estate of William Henderson. William Henderson was my father. He had died in late 2001. He left me $55,000. I had put that money into our joint account, and we used it to help pay for the renovation. That was my money, my inheritance, and it had gone directly into improving the house that Thomas was now claiming was solely his. I photographed everything. I sent it all to Janet. The following week, Janet's office filed our formal response to Thomas's lawsuit. The response denied every claim Thomas had made. It asserted that the house was marital property. It challenged the validity of the 2018 trust document. It demanded full financial discovery. Janet also filed something called a motion for protective order. She asked the court to order Thomas not to dispose of any assets, not to take out any loans against the house, and not to make any changes to the title or ownership structure while the case was pending. The papers were served to Thomas at his office by a process server. I was not there when he received them, but I can imagine his reaction. He came home that evening and his entire demeanor had changed. He was not calm anymore. He was not controlled. He came into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner, and he stood in the doorway staring at me. "You hired a lawyer," he said. His voice was tight. "Yes," I said. I kept my eyes on the cutting board where I was chopping vegetables. I did not look at him. "Who?" he demanded. "That is between me and my attorney," I said. "Vivian, you need to tell me who you hired. I need to know who I am dealing with." "Then have your attorney contact my attorney," I said. I looked at him then. "Her name is Janet Kerrigan. She is with Kerrigan and Associates. Your lawyer can reach out to her." Thomas's face was red. "Do you have any idea what you have just done? Do you have any idea how expensive this is going to be? You are going to waste tens of thousands of dollars on attorney's fees for nothing. You are going to lose." "Maybe," I said, "but I am going to fight." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "You are making the biggest mistake of your life, Vivian. You do not understand what you are up against. My attorney is one of the best in the state. He has handled dozens of complex property cases. You have some small-time family lawyer who probably does divorces for $50,000 estates. You are outmatched. You are outgunned. And when this is over, you will have cost yourself everything for nothing." "I guess we will see," I said. He left the room. I heard him on the phone minutes later. His voice was low and angry. I could not hear the words, but I could hear the tone. I finished making dinner. My hands were shaking, but I kept cutting vegetables. I kept moving, because if I stopped, I might fall apart, and I could not afford to fall apart. 3 days later, the direct evidence arrived. Janet had connected me with a forensic accountant named Leonard Pritchard. Leonard was 68 years old, semi-retired, but he still took on cases that interested him. Janet told him about my situation, and he agreed to help. Leonard's job was to trace the actual source of every dollar that had gone into purchasing and maintaining the Maple Crest Avenue property from 1975 to the present. He was going to reconstruct the complete financial history of our home. I gave Leonard access to everything, all the documents I had photographed, all the bank statements, tax returns, mortgage records, renovation receipts. I gave him the old checkbook registers. I gave him everything. Leonard called me 1 week later. "Mrs. Moore, I need you to come to my office. I have some preliminary findings I want to show you." I drove to his office in South Portland. It was a small, neat space. Leonard was a small, neat man with wire-rimmed glasses and a precise way of speaking. He reminded me of an accountant from an old movie. He had a conference table covered with spreadsheets and documents. He gestured for me to sit down. "Mrs. Moore," he said, "I have been doing this kind of work for 42 years. I have traced finances through shell companies and offshore accounts and deliberate obfuscation. What I am about to show you is not complicated. It is just hidden under layers of time and trust. He slid a spreadsheet across the table to me. "This is the financial history of your home. Let me walk you through it." He pointed to the first line. The house was purchased in 1975 for $93,000. The down payment was $24,000. That money came from a joint savings account number ending in 4782 at Portland Savings Bank. I have the original bank records. He showed me copies of the old bank statements. I recognized them. I had photographed them from my files. "That joint savings account shows regular deposits from two sources," Leonard continued. "One source is labeled T. Moore Salary, deposits of approximately $450 twice monthly. The other source is labeled V. Moore Salary, deposits of approximately $220 twice monthly. Both of you contributed to that down payment, Mrs. Moore. It was not your husband's premarital assets. It was money you both earned and saved together during the first 2 years of your marriage." I felt my chest tighten. This was actual evidence. "The mortgage payments," Leonard continued, "were made from the same joint account for 30 years, until the mortgage was paid off in 2005. Both of your incomes went into that account. Both of you paid that mortgage." He slid another document across to me. "In 2002, you did a major renovation. Cost was $78,000. I have traced the source of those funds. $23,000 came from a home equity line of credit secured by the property. That was paid off over 7 years from your joint account. And $55,000 came from a deposit made in January 2002. He pointed to the bank statement. "This deposit is coded as an estate distribution. I cross-referenced it with the probate records for William Henderson, deceased December 2001. You were the beneficiary of $55,000 from your father's estate. That money went directly into renovating the marital home." I had known this. I had found these records myself. But hearing Leonard lay it out in his precise, methodical way made it real in a different way. "Mrs. Moore," Leonard said, looking at me over his glasses, "your husband's claim that this house is his sole property because he purchased it with premarital assets and his earnings is demonstrably false. The documentary evidence shows clearly that this house was purchased and maintained with marital funds that both of you contributed to over 47 years. It also shows that your separate inheritance went into improving the property." "Is this enough?" I asked. "Is this enough to prove the house is mine too?" "In my professional opinion," Leonard said, "this is more than enough. Any competent family law attorney can use this evidence to establish that this property is marital property subject to equitable distribution, regardless of what any trust document says." I felt tears prick at my eyes. I blinked them back. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you so much." "I am not done yet," Leonard said. "Janet asked me to look into something else. She asked me to investigate any business entities or trusts that your husband controls. Specifically, she wanted me to look into Moore Brennan Holdings." My breath caught. "You found it?" "I did," Leonard said. "And what I found is significant." He pulled out another set of documents. Moore Brennan Holdings, LLC, was formed in Massachusetts in 2017. It is registered as a limited liability company. Thomas Alexander Moore and Natalie Marie Brennan. He slid a document across to me. It was the LLC formation document. I saw both their names. "Natalie Brennan is not just a consultant," I said quietly. "No," Leonard said, "she is a business partner, and possibly more, though I cannot speak to the personal relationship. What I can speak to is the financial relationship." He showed me bank records. Over the past 5 years, this LLC has received significant fund transfers from accounts that I believe are joint marital accounts. I am still tracing all of them, but I have identified approximately $900,000 so far that was transferred from accounts in your and your husband's names into Moore Brennan Holdings. $900,000, nearly $1 million, transferred from our accounts to an LLC that Thomas co-owned with another woman. "Where did that money go?" I asked. "Various places," Leonard said. "Some of it was used to purchase investment properties. Some was used to purchase a condominium in Boston in 2020, valued at $420,000. That condominium is titled in Natalie Brennan's name." He showed me the property records. There it was, a condo in Boston, purchased with money from an LLC that had been funded with money from our accounts, and it was in her name. "Thomas bought her a condo," I said, "with our money." It appears that way, Leonard said carefully, though technically the LLC purchased it and then transferred title to her. But yes, that is the effective result. Thomas had not just stolen from me. He had not just tried to take my home. He had been systematically draining our marital assets for 5 years to build a separate financial life with another woman. He had bought her a condo. He had formed a business with her. And then he had tried to take my home and leave me with nothing. "Is this enough?" I asked Leonard. "Is this enough to stop him?" "Mrs. Moore," Leonard said, "in Maine the dissipation of marital assets for non-marital purposes is highly relevant to property division. What your husband did, transferring $900,000 of marital funds to benefit another woman, is exactly the kind of financial misconduct that courts take very seriously. This does not just help your case, this transforms it." I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. When I finally did go in, Thomas was there. He was in the living room, watching television. He looked up when I came in. "Where were you?" he asked. "Out," I said. I went upstairs to my office and I called Janet. I told her what Leonard had found. "Vivian," Janet said, and I could hear the shift in her voice. "This changes everything. I am going to file an amended counterclaim. We are not just defending against his lawsuit anymore. We are going on offense." The amended counterclaim was filed the following Monday. It was extensive and it was devastating. It outlined the complete financial history of the house, supported by Leonard's documentation, proving that it was marital property. It challenged the 2018 trust document on grounds of undue influence, fraud, and lack of independent counsel. It detailed the existence of Moore Brennan Holdings LLC. It documented the $900,000 in transfers from marital accounts to the LLC. It documented the Boston condominium purchased in Natalie Brennan's name with LLC funds. It argued that Thomas had engaged in dissipation of marital assets. It requested a complete forensic accounting of all marital assets, including any properties or accounts held under Moore Brennan Holdings or any other entity. It also included a motion to freeze all assets of Moore Brennan Holdings pending resolution of the case. It was like dropping a bomb. By Wednesday afternoon, Thomas's composure had completely fractured. He came into my library where I was reading. He was holding a copy of Janet's filing. His hand was shaking slightly. "What do you think you are doing?" His voice was controlled, but barely. "Do you have any idea what you have just done?" "I am protecting my interests," I said calmly, "the same way you protected yours." "You have just accused me of financial misconduct in a public court filing," he said. His voice was rising now. "You have made allegations about my business dealings. You have dragged Natalie into this. You have requested an asset freeze that will affect accounts and investments that have nothing to do with you. If they were funded with marital money, they have everything to do with me," I said. He slammed the papers down on the table next to me. "Vivian, listen to me very carefully. If you push this, there will be consequences. The IRS could get involved. There could be tax implications that affect both of us. The asset freeze affects accounts that you benefit from too. You are cutting off your own nose to spite your face." "Janet explained the process to me," I said. "I understand the risks." "Who is helping you?" he demanded. "This is not the work of some small-town lawyer. Someone is advising you. Someone is funding this. Who is it?" "I am funding this," I said, "with my own retirement money." "That is all you need to know." He stared at me. For a moment I saw something in his face that I had never seen before. Fear. He was afraid. Good. He left the room. I heard him on the phone within minutes. His voice was low and urgent. I heard him say, "We have a problem. A serious problem." I went back to my book. I was reading a mystery novel. The detective had just uncovered the critical clue. I found it very satisfying. The following day, I received a phone call from a number I did not recognize. I answered it cautiously. "Is this Vivian Moore?" A woman's voice. "Yes," I said. "Who is this?" "My name is Natalie Brennan." I sat down. I had not expected this. "I wanted to reach out to you," she continued. Her voice was controlled, practiced. "I think there has been a misunderstanding. I want you to know that Thomas always intended to make appropriate arrangements for you. What is happening in the courts is an unfortunate escalation. I have no desire to see you harmed." I listened to her speech. It sounded rehearsed. like she'd written it out beforehand. "I understand this is difficult for you," she continued, "but I think if we could all sit down together, adults, we could work something out that is fair to everyone. This does not need to be adversarial." When she finished, I waited a moment. Then I said, "Miss Brennan, I would encourage you to direct any future communication to my attorney, Janet Kerrigan. Have a good day." I hung up. Within the hour, Janet called me. "Thomas's attorney just contacted me, Gregory Ashford. He wants to schedule an urgent settlement conference. He is proposing that you accept a lump sum payment of $500,000 in exchange for dropping all claims, vacating the property within 90 days, and signing a non-disclosure agreement." $500,000. For a $4.2 million house. For 51 years of marriage. For $900,000 that had been stolen from our accounts. "What do you want me to tell him?" Janet asked, though I could hear in her voice that she already knew my answer. "Tell him no," I said. Janet did not try to convince me otherwise. She simply said, "I will let him know." 20 minutes later, I received a text message from Thomas's phone. "You are going to regret this. I have information about you that will make you look very bad to Sophia and Rebecca. Do not test me." My hands shook as I read it, but I knew what to do. I took a screenshot. I sent it to Janet immediately. Janet called me back within minutes. "Vivian, this is harassment. This is intimidation, and it is going into the court record. Save any other messages he sends you. Do not respond to him. Do not engage. Just document everything." "I will," I said. That evening, Thomas did not come home. He stayed somewhere else. I did not know where, and I did not ask. The house felt different without him. Quieter, emptier, but also safer somehow. The next blow came from our daughter Rebecca. Thomas called her. I do not know exactly what he told her, but 3 days after his threatening text to me, Rebecca drove up from Boston and appeared at my door. She looked upset and confused. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table. Rebecca looked at me with troubled eyes. "Dad called me," she said. "He told me that you are suing him. He said you are trying to take everything from him. He said you hired a predatory lawyer who is manipulating you. He said this whole thing could have been resolved privately, but you are making it into a huge legal battle that is going to tear the family apart." I had been expecting this. I had prepared for it, but it still hurt to hear. "Rebecca," I said calmly, "your father is not telling you the truth, or at least not the whole truth. Let me show you something." I opened my laptop. I pulled up the documents Leonard had prepared. I showed Rebecca the financial history of the house. I showed her the proof that the down payment came from joint savings that I had contributed to. I showed her my father's inheritance that went into the renovation. Then I showed her more Brennan holdings. I showed her the $900,000 that had been transferred from our accounts. I showed her the Boston condominium. Rebecca sat in silence for a long time, reading through the documents. Her face went through several changes: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, anger. "Dad did this?" she said quietly. "Yes," I said. "He took $900,000 from your accounts and bought a condo for another woman?" "Yes." "And then he sued you to try to take this house?" "Yes." Rebecca put her face in her hands. She sat like that for a full minute. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "I am so sorry, Mom," she said. "I should have known something was wrong. I should have questioned him more when he called me." "You had no reason to doubt him," I said. "He is your father. You trust him. That is normal. Did he tell you anything else?" I asked carefully. "He said if you keep pushing this, he is going to have to reveal some things about you. Some mistakes you made years ago. He said it would be embarrassing for you and for the whole family." I almost laughed. "Rebecca, I have been a librarian in Portland, Maine for 51 years. I have lived the most boring, predictable life imaginable. I have no secrets. I have made no scandalous mistakes. Your father is bluffing." Rebecca looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "I believe you." She stayed for 4 hours. We talked about everything. About the lawsuit, about Natalie Brennan, about how long this had been going on, about whether I thought Thomas had actually loved me or if our entire marriage had been a lie. I did not have good answers to that last question. I still do not. When Rebecca left, she hugged me tightly. "I am on your side, Mom," she said. "Whatever you need." "I need you to not tell your father that I showed you all of this," I said. "Not yet. Can you do that?" "Why?" she asked. "Because I do not want him to know what I know," I said. "Not yet. I want him to think he still has leverage. It will make him careless." Rebecca looked at me with something like admiration. "Okay," she said. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The house was quiet. The winter sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. I thought about Thomas, about the man I had married 51 years ago, about the man he had become. Or maybe this was who he had always been, and I had just never seen it. I wondered what he had told her about me. I wondered if she knew she was helping him destroy someone's life. I wondered if she cared. And I thought about myself, about who I had been and who I was becoming. The gentle woman who never raised her voice was learning to fight. The woman who had spent 51 years keeping peace was learning that some things are worth the conflict. I was afraid. I was angry. I was hurt. But I was also determined. Thomas had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated me. He had looked at 51 years of gentleness and assumed it meant weakness. He was about to learn the difference. The escalation continued. The legal maneuvering became more intense. Gregory Ashford, Thomas's attorney, filed several motions trying to dismiss parts of our counterclaim. He argued that the LLC was a separate entity and its finances were not relevant to the property dispute. He argued that my allegations of dissipation were speculative and unsupported. Janet responded with Leonard's detailed forensic report. She filed it as evidence, along with copies of all the bank records, transfer documents, and property records. She argued that the LLC was funded entirely with marital assets, and therefore its finances were absolutely relevant. The judge scheduled a hearing for early February to address the various motions. In the meantime, I did something that I should have done earlier. I reached out for emotional support. I called Marian Fletcher. Marian had been my closest friend since 1982. We had worked together at the Portland Public Library for 18 years. We had raised our children through the same years, celebrated birthdays and graduations together, supported each other through various life challenges. She had retired 3 years before I did and moved to Portsmouth to be closer to her daughter. I had not told Marian what was happening. I had not told anyone except Rebecca, but I realized I could not carry this alone anymore. I needed a friend. I called her on a Tuesday evening. When she answered, I said, "Marian, I need to talk to you about something. Can I come visit you?" "Of course," she said immediately. "When? This weekend?" "I will be here," she said. "Vivian, is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but I will explain when I see you." I drove to Portsmouth on Saturday. Marian had a small house near the ocean. When I arrived, she had tea ready and a fire going in the fireplace. We sat in her living room and I told her everything. Marian listened the way she always listened, completely present, no judgment, no interruptions, just absolute attention. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I will be there Friday. I am coming to Portland. You should not be dealing with this alone." "Marian, you do not have to do that," I started to say. "I know I do not have to," she said. "I want to. You are my friend. You are going through something terrible. I am going to be there." And she was. Marian drove up to Portland the following Friday and stayed for a week. She stayed in my guest room. She was simply there. She made meals. She sat with me in the evenings. She came with me to a meeting with Janet. She was a solid, steady presence. One evening we were sitting on my porch, even though it was February and cold. We had blankets and hot tea. Marian looked at me and said, "You are doing something extraordinary, you know." "I do not feel extraordinary," I said. "I feel terrified most of the time." "That is what makes it extraordinary," Marian said. "You are terrified and you are doing it anyway. That is courage." If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community. so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Marian did more than just provide emotional support. She turned out to be a valuable strategic ally as well. Her son-in-law, David Fletcher, was a retired judge from Cumberland County. He had served in family court for 26 years before retiring in 2020. Marian mentioned my situation to him, and he offered to meet with me, not to provide legal advice, which he could not do, but to offer perspective. I met David at a coffee shop in Falmouth on a cold Tuesday morning. He was 70 years old, calm and measured in his speech. He ordered black coffee and listened to a summary of my case. "Your attorney filed an asset freeze motion," he said. "Yes," I said. "Last month. And the forensic accounting is complete?" "Yes. It documents $900,000 transferred to an LLC over 5 years." David nodded slowly. He stirred his coffee, even though he had not added anything to it. In my 26 years on the bench, I saw hundreds of cases like this. Not exactly like this, but similar. Financial misconduct, hidden assets, one spouse trying to cut the other out. He looked at me directly. Cases with solid documentary evidence like you have, with a clear pattern of financial misconduct, those cases rarely ended badly for the wronged party, assuming they had competent representation and were willing to hold firm under pressure. "The pressure has been significant," I said. "Right before the other side realizes they cannot win, they usually make one final push, one more settlement offer, one more attempt at intimidation. That is when you have to be strongest." "I can be strong," I said. He smiled slightly. "I believe you can." Marian also did something else that proved invaluable. She reached out to Sophia without me asking her to. Marian and Sophia had known each other for years. Marian called Sophia and explained, gently and carefully, what was really happening, not the version Thomas was telling, the truth. Sophia called me that evening. She was crying when I answered. "Mom," she said, "Marian told me everything. Why did you not tell me sooner?" "I did not want to put you in the middle. I did not want to force you to choose sides." "Mom, you are my mother," Sophia said. "There are no sides. I am on your side, always. What can I do? How can I help?" Just hearing her say that meant more than I can explain. "Just be yourself," I said, "and do not let your father know that you know everything. Not yet." "Why not?" she asked. "Because I want him to think he still has a chance of turning you against me," I said. "I want him to keep making mistakes." Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You have gotten strategic, Mom." "I have had to," I said. With Marian there, with both my daughters now fully informed and supportive, I felt like I had an army, even if it was a small one. The hearing on the motions was scheduled for the first week of February. Janet prepared me thoroughly. She explained what would happen, what arguments Gregory Ashford would likely make, what the judge would be looking for. The day of the hearing, Marian drove me to the courthouse. Rebecca came up from Boston. Sophia met us there. We sat together in the courtroom gallery while Janet argued our position before the judge. Gregory Ashford argued that the LLC finances were private business matters and not subject to discovery in a property dispute. He argued that Natalie Brennan was an innocent third party and should not be dragged into our marital issues. He argued that the asset freeze was overreaching and would harm legitimate business operations. Janet countered that the LLC had been funded entirely with marital assets and therefore was absolutely subject to discovery. She presented Leonard's forensic analysis, showing the transfer of $900,000 from clearly identified joint accounts. She argued that the asset freeze was necessary to prevent further dissipation of marital assets. The judge, a woman in her early 60s named Judge Patricia Caldwell, asked pointed questions. She wanted to see the documentation of the transfers. She wanted to know whether Thomas had disclosed the LLC to me. She wanted to know whether the Boston condominium had been purchased with LLC funds. Janet had answers to all of these questions, supported by documents. At the end of the hearing, Judge Caldwell issued her ruling from the bench. She granted our motion to compel full financial disclosure of all LLC accounts and transactions. She maintained the asset freeze pending further proceedings. and she denied Gregory's motion to dismiss the dissipation claims. The documentary evidence presented, Judge Caldwell said, raises serious questions about the source and use of funds that appear to be marital assets. These questions merit full discovery and examination. Motion to compel is granted. Asset freeze remains in place. We will reconvene for a status conference in 6 weeks. Real, tangible hope. After the hearing, Janet came out to the hallway where we were waiting. That went very well, she said. Judge Caldwell is thorough and fair. She saw through the smoke and mirrors. Sophia hugged me. Rebecca hugged me. Marian put her arm around my shoulders and said, "You are going to win this." I wanted to believe her. The settlement offer came 2 weeks later. This time, it was different. Gregory Ashford sent a formal proposal through Janet. The offer was $900,000 in cash, transfer of a rental property Thomas owned in Cape Elizabeth valued at $450,000, and a lifetime right to remain in the Maple Crest Avenue house, with ownership transferring to the trust upon my death. A lifetime right to remain in my own home as a permanent guest. The total value of the offer was approximately $1.35 million, plus the right to live in the house for the rest of my life. Janet called me to discuss it. It is a significant offer, she said. Much better than the $500,000 he offered before. But I still would not own my home, I said. Correct, Janet said. You would have the right to live there, but not the right to sell it or borrow against it or pass it to your daughters. And the $900,000 plus the rental property equals about $1.35 million. If we went to trial and won, you could potentially be awarded a much larger share of the marital estate. What do you think I should do? I asked. I cannot tell you what to do, Janet said. That is your decision. But I can tell you what I think will happen if we go to trial. Based on the evidence we have, based on Judge Caldwell's rulings so far, I think we have a very strong case. I think you would likely be awarded the house outright as part of an equitable distribution. I think the dissipation finding would work in your favor. I think you would end up with significantly more than what is being offered. But there is no guarantee, I said. But this is as strong a case as I have seen. I thought about it for 2 days. I walked in my garden, even though it was winter, and everything was dormant. I sat in my library. I talked to Marian. I talked to Sophia and Rebecca. And I thought about what accepting that offer would mean. It would mean Thomas got to keep the LLC. He got to keep the Boston condo that he bought for Natalie Brennan with our money. He got to keep most of our marital assets. And I got to live in my house as a guest until I died. It would mean he won. Not completely, but mostly. I called Janet on the 3rd day. Tell him no, I said. Are you sure? Janet asked. I am sure, I said. I am not going to let him buy me off with a fraction of what I deserve. I am going to court. Janet was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Okay, then we go to trial. I will let Gregory know. The response from Thomas was swift. Within hours of Janet declining the settlement offer, I received a personal visit. It was a Sunday afternoon. I heard a car in the driveway. I looked out and saw Thomas's Mercedes. Behind it was another car I did not recognize, a black sedan, and behind that was a 3rd car. I went to the door. Thomas got out of his car. From the 2nd car emerged a man in his 50s, wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase. And from the 3rd car, Natalie Brennan emerged. I opened the door, but I did not step outside. I stood in the doorway. Vivian, Thomas said. His voice had that controlled warmth again, the boardroom voice. I would like to talk to you. Please. No attorneys. Just us. Just family. Natalie Brennan is not family, I said. She is here as a witness, Thomas said. And this is Michael Porter. He is a professional mediator. I have asked him to help us have a productive conversation. I have an attorney, I said. Any mediation goes through her. Please, Vivian, Thomas said. Just give me 30 minutes. That is all I'm asking. Let us try to resolve this like adults before we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting in court. I hesitated, then I made a decision. Come in, I said. I will make coffee. I brought them into the dining room. I made coffee and set out 4 cups. I sat across from all 3 of them. Michael Porter opened his briefcase and took out a folder. Thomas spoke first. He was thoughtful. He was measured. He acknowledged that the situation had become very complicated. He expressed what he called sincere regret for the way things had unfolded. He said he understood now that he should have been more transparent with me about the estate planning and the LLC. Then Michael Porter slid a new document across the table. The offer was different this time. $1.3 million in cash, transfer of the Cape Elizabeth rental property, and full ownership of the Maplecrest Avenue house transferred to me, free and clear. I would get my house. I would get $1.3 million. Thomas would keep the rest of the marital assets, including the LLC. It was the best offer yet, and it was designed to be tempting. I looked at the document for a long moment. Then Natalie Brennan spoke. "Mrs. Moore," she said. Her voice was even and controlled. "I understand this is very painful for you, but I want you to consider what continued litigation will cost you. Not just financially, emotionally. Your daughters are going to watch their parents destroy each other in court. Your grandchildren are going to see this family torn apart. You are 74 years old," she said. "You have lived a long, full life. You have this beautiful home. You can have financial security. Is it really worth spending the next year of your life in courtrooms and depositions and trials just to try to get a few $100,000 more? Is that really how you want to spend your remaining time?" There it was, the condescension I had been waiting for, the barely concealed contempt, the implication that I should be grateful for what I was being offered, that I should know my place, that I should accept my role as the old woman being put out to pasture with a generous severance package. I looked at Natalie Brennan, really looked at her. She was 41 years old, polished, professional. She probably thought she was being sophisticated. She probably thought she was helping. She had no idea who she was talking to. I looked at Thomas. Then I spoke. "Thomas," I said calmly, "I have a forensic accounting that documents $900,000 removed from our joint accounts over 5 years and transferred to an LLC that you co-own with Miss Brennan. I have documentation that this LLC purchased a condominium in Boston valued at $420,000 and transferred title to Miss Brennan. I have proof that the down payment on this house came from joint savings that I contributed to. I have proof that my inheritance from my father went into renovating this house. I have a 2018 estate document that I signed without independent legal counsel, under circumstances that my attorney believes constitute fraud and undue influence." I folded my hands on the table. "I also have a text message from you threatening to damage my relationship with my daughters if I did not cooperate. That message is now part of the court record, and I have both of my daughters fully informed and supportive of me." I paused. "What I do not have," I said, "is any reason whatsoever to sign this document." Thomas's face changed. The warmth disappeared instantly, not gradually, all at once. "You are going to lose," he said. His voice was cold now, angry. "You are going to spend a year in court, and you are going to lose. Gregory Ashford is one of the best litigators in New England. He has handled cases 10 times more complex than this. You have a small firm attorney who probably handles divorce and custody cases. You are outmatched. You are going to lose, and you are going to end up with less than what I am offering you right now." "Then I guess we will find out," I said. Natalie Brennan tried one more time. "Mrs. Moore, if you continue to pursue the LLC matter in court, there will be tax implications. There will be public disclosure. There will be complications that affect many people, not just you and Thomas. Is that really what you want?" I looked at her steadily. "Miss Brennan, you participated in the systematic transfer of $900,000 of marital assets for your benefit. You accepted a $420,000 condominium purchased with money that was not yours. And now you are sitting in my home, trying to convince me that I should quietly accept losing half of what I am entitled to. I think you should leave." Her face flushed red. She started to say something, but Michael Porter stood up. He looked uncomfortable. "I think we are done here," he said. Thomas stood up. He looked at me with something I had not seen before. Not anger, something colder, something like hatred. "You are making the worst mistake of your life, Vivian. When this is over, you are going to be alone. You are going to have spent your entire savings on legal fees. You are going to have destroyed your relationship with your daughters. And you are going to have nothing. I already have nothing, I said. You made sure of that. Now I am fighting to get something back. I heard the cars backing out of the driveway. Then the house was quiet. I sat at the dining room table for a long time. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from having said everything I needed to say and not backing down. Marian came over that evening. I had called her after they left. She brought dinner and wine, and we sat on my porch even though it was cold. You were magnificent, she said. I was terrified, I said. Magnificently terrified, Marian said, which is the best kind. The deposition was scheduled for the last week of April. Janet prepared me intensively. We met 4 times. She played the role of Gregory Ashford, asking me harsh questions, pushing me, trying to trip me up. I answered every question calmly and precisely. I did not get flustered. I did not get defensive. I just told the truth. You are going to be fine, Janet said at the end of our last preparation session. I know, I said, and I meant it. The deposition was held in Gregory Ashford's office. Glass and steel and expensive furniture designed to intimidate. Thomas was there, seated beside Gregory. Natalie Brennan had been deposed separately the previous week. Janet had told me that went well for our side. I sat across from Gregory with Janet beside me and a court reporter at the end of the table. I looked at Thomas once when I came in. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. The stress was showing. Good. Gregory began with background questions. How long had I been married? What was my education? What was my work history? I answered each question simply and directly. Then he moved to the 2018 trust documents. Mrs. Moore, is it correct that you signed the 2018 estate amendment voluntarily, without anyone forcing you or threatening you? I signed it, I said. I did not understand what I was signing. I was not given independent legal advice. I was told by my husband that the documents were routine estate updates and that everything had been reviewed by our attorney. But no one physically prevented you from reading the documents? The documents were presented in a manner designed to suggest they were administrative formalities. My husband moved through them quickly, pointing to where I should sign. The entire session lasted approximately 20 minutes and included multiple documents. I was not given adequate time to read and understand each one individually. Mrs. Moore, you are a college-educated woman. You worked as a professional librarian for 28 years. Are you saying you were incapable of reading and understanding these documents? I am saying that I trusted my husband of 49 years when he told me what I was signing. I am saying that a reasonable person in my position, being told by their spouse that these were routine documents reviewed by an attorney, might rely on that representation rather than demanding independent legal review. Gregory tried several more approaches. Each time I answered carefully. Janet had taught me well. Then he moved to the LLC. He showed me a document, a consent form with my signature on it from 2017. Mrs. Moore, do you recognize this document? Moore, this is your signature, is it not? I looked at it carefully. It appears to be yes. This is a consent form for the formation of Moore Brennan Holdings, LLC. You signed it. You consented to the formation of this entity. May I see the complete document, I asked. Gregory looked annoyed, but had his assistant produce the full document. I read it carefully. Then I said, this is a general consent form for the formation of a potential investment entity. It does not specify the name Moore Brennan Holdings. It uses generic language about a future investment vehicle. The document says that the entity may be formed at a later date, as deemed appropriate by the managing partner. I looked at Gregory directly. I signed this believing it was related to a possible rental property investment my husband was considering. I had no knowledge that it would be called Moore Brennan Holdings. I had no knowledge that Natalie Brennan would be a co-owner. I had no knowledge that $900,000 would be transferred from our joint accounts to this entity. I learned all of that from my forensic accountant's report. Gregory tried to trip me up on the transfers. He suggested that I had access to the joint accounts and must have seen the transfers if I had been paying attention. I did not monitor our joint accounts closely, I said. My husband handled the finances. The transfers were done in small amounts, always under $10,000, deliberately structured to avoid triggering reporting requirements. They were designed to be difficult to notice. Are you accusing your husband of deliberately deceiving you? I am stating facts, I said. The transfers occurred. They were structured in a specific pattern. I was not informed of them. Those are facts. When Gregory finished, it was Janet's turn. She asked me to describe in detail the 2018 signing session. I did, precisely and thoroughly. She asked me to describe my financial contributions to the house. I described them all. The joint savings for the down payment, my salary that went into the mortgage payments, my father's inheritance that funded the renovation. She asked me whether I had ever been informed about the LLC, about the transfers, about the Boston condominium. I answered no to each question. Then Janet entered the text message into the record. She read it aloud. You are going to regret this. I have information about you that will make you look very bad to Sophia and Rebecca. Do not test me. Mrs. Moore, did you receive this text message from your husband? Yes. What did you do when you received it? I took a screenshot and forwarded it to you immediately. Why did you do that? Because it felt like a threat. Like he was trying to intimidate me into dropping my legal claims. Gregory attempted a brief redirect. He asked whether Thomas had ever physically threatened me or harmed me. No, I said. The threats were not physical. They were threats to isolate me from my family, to turn my daughters against me, to damage my reputation. Those threats can be just as harmful as physical threats. When the deposition ended, Janet and I walked to the parking garage together. She did not say anything until we were in her car. Then she turned to me and said, Vivian, in 22 years of practicing family law, I have deposed hundreds of people. What you just did in there was remarkable. You were calm, precise, credible, and completely unshakable. If we went to trial tomorrow, you would be a devastating witness. I felt something release in my chest. Thank you, I said. No, Janet said. Thank you. You did the hard work. You prepared. You showed up. You told your truth. That is what wins cases. I called Marion from the car. It is done, I said. How do you feel? She asked. Strong, I said, and I realized it was true. The ruling came on a Friday morning in early June. I was in my garden when my phone rang. It was Janet. Vivian, she said, and I heard it in her voice immediately. We won. I sat down right there in the garden, on the grass, still holding my gardening shears. Tell me, I said. The judge's ruling was 61 pages long. Janet walked me through it over the phone, then sent me the complete document electronically. Judge Patricia Caldwell had issued a comprehensive decision. First, the 2018 trust amendment was declared void. The court found that I had signed the documents without independent legal counsel, without full disclosure of their effect, and under circumstances that constituted undue influence. The amendment was set aside as if it had never existed. Second, the Maple Crest Avenue property was determined to be marital property. The court reviewed Leonard's forensic analysis in detail and found that the house had been purchased and maintained with marital funds that both Thomas and I had contributed to over 47 years. The court specifically noted my contribution from my father's inheritance to the major renovation. Third, the court found that Thomas had engaged in dissipation of marital assets. The $900,000 transferred to Moore Brennan Holdings LLC over 5 years was determined to be marital funds transferred for non-marital purposes. The court noted that the LLC had been used to purchase property in Natalie Brennan's name, which constituted a misuse of marital assets. Fourth, the court ordered an equitable distribution of the marital estate. Given the dissipation finding and given my documented contributions to the property, the court awarded me 68% of the total marital estate. 68%. The house was awarded to me outright, free and clear, full ownership, my name on the deed, no trust, no limitations. Thomas was awarded his remaining investment accounts, his business interests, and his personal property. the court ordered him to return the $900,000 to the marital estate as a corrective measure for the dissipation. After that correction, his share of the total estate came to approximately $2.1 million. My share, including the house valued at $4.2 million, came to approximately $4.4 million. Judge Caldwell also addressed the text message. She included it in her findings as evidence of Thomas's attempts to intimidate and harass me. While it did not result in separate legal penalties, it was part of the permanent court record. Finally, the court ordered Thomas to pay his own legal fees and denied his request to have me contribute to them. I read the entire ruling sitting in my garden. I read it twice. Then I called Janet back. "This is real?" I said. "This is final?" "Thomas has the right to appeal," Janet said. "But frankly, Judge Caldwell's ruling is so thorough and so well supported by the evidence that I do not think an appeal would succeed. And appeals are very expensive. My guess is Gregory will advise him not to appeal." "So I won," I said. "You won," Janet confirmed. I sat in my garden and I cried, not from sadness, from relief, from the overwhelming reality that I had fought and I had won. Marion came over within an hour. Sophia and Rebecca both drove up that evening. We had dinner together in my dining room, in my house. "I am so proud of you, Mom," Sophia said. "We both are," Rebecca added. I looked at my daughters and I felt grateful that they knew the truth, grateful that they had stood by me, grateful that Thomas's threats to turn them against me had failed completely. The next week I had the locks changed. Thomas had moved out weeks earlier, but I wanted new locks anyway. A locksmith named Peter came with his assistant. They replaced every lock in the house in under 3 hours. When Peter handed me the new keys, I held them in my hand and felt their weight. To my house that I owned, free and clear. That weekend, Sophia and Rebecca came for dinner again. Rebecca brought her husband and their son, my grandson Tyler. Sophia brought her husband and their 2 children, Emma and Lucas. We had a big family dinner. I made roast chicken and vegetables and a pie. The grandchildren ran through the house and the garden. Lucas found a frog near the roses and wanted to keep it as a pet. I told him the frog needed to stay in the garden where it belonged, but we could visit it any time. After dinner, while the grandchildren were watching a movie, Tyler, who was 16, asked me a question. "Grandma, why did Grandpa do what he did?" Rebecca started to interrupt, but I shook my head. It was a fair question. "I have thought about that a lot. I think your grandfather built his entire sense of self on being successful and being in control. I think when he started to get older, when he retired, he felt like he was losing that. And I think he tried to create a new life where he could feel powerful and important again. Unfortunately, he tried to build that new life by destroying the old one." Tyler thought about this. "Did you ever think about just giving up, just letting him have what he wanted, so you didn't have to fight?" "Yes," I said honestly, "many times. It would have been easier. Why did you not?" he asked. I thought about how to answer, because giving up would not actually have been easier. It would have meant losing who I am, losing my home, losing my dignity. I realized that fighting was hard, but disappearing would have been harder. Tyler nodded slowly. "I am glad you fought," he said. "Me too," I said. 8 weeks after the ruling, I received an unexpected letter. It came from a law firm in Boston. When I opened it, I found that it was from Natalie Brennan's attorney. The letter stated that Miss Brennan wished to make a voluntary financial settlement with me, outside of any legal obligation. She recognized the harm that had been caused and wanted to offer restitution. She was offering to transfer the full value of the Boston condominium to me, $420,000. I called Janet immediately. "What do you think this is about?" I asked. Janet was quiet for a moment. The LLC was dissolved as part of the court's orders. She probably walked away from the whole situation with some assets, but she knows those assets were built on money that should have been yours. This is her way of trying to make it right. "Do I have to accept it?" I asked. "No," Janet said, "but $420,000 is significant money." I thought about it for several days. That money was tainted. It represented betrayal, It represented years of Thomas systematically stealing from our marriage to build something with another woman. But it was also an acknowledgement, an admission that what happened was wrong. I called Janet back. But I wanted in writing that this is a voluntary settlement and an acknowledgement of the source of the funds. I can make that happen, Janet said. The money was transferred in late August. I put most of it in a trust for my grandchildren's education. Emma wanted to study marine biology. Lucas wanted to be an engineer. Tyler wanted to study architecture. Rebecca's daughter Lily, who was 13, wanted to be a veterinarian. The trust would help make those dreams possible. I also did something else. I donated $50,000 to the Portland Public Library. I asked them to use it to create a program helping women navigate legal and financial resources during divorce and estate disputes. The program would provide free consultations with attorneys and financial advisors. They called it the Fletcher Moore Resource Center, Marion's last name and mine. The program launched the following March. I attended the opening. There were already 8 women signed up for consultations. One of them was a woman named Denise, 70 years old, who had just discovered her husband's hidden financial life. She came up to me at the reception. "I read about your case in the newspaper," she said. "I read how you fought and won. It gave me courage. I filed my own case last week." I hugged her. I gave her Janet's card. I told her about the 3:30 morning inventory. I told her about the importance of documentation. I told her she was stronger than she thought. "I do not feel strong," she said. Neither did I. But you will. The months after the court victory settled into a new kind of normal. Thomas and I had no contact. He moved to Florida, I heard through Rebecca. He sold most of his remaining assets and left Maine entirely. I did not miss him. What I missed was the person I thought he was. But that person had never really existed. Sophia and Rebecca visited regularly. The grandchildren came often. I planted a new garden bed with dahlias and zinnias. I volunteered at the library 2 mornings a week. I started writing again, small pieces about my experience, about resilience, about finding yourself when you thought you had disappeared. I posted some of those pieces on a simple website Sophia helped me create. I called it Quiet Strength. Within a few months, I was receiving emails from women all over the country, women who had been through similar experiences, women who were just starting their own fights, women who needed to know they were not alone. I answered every email. One woman, Gloria, wrote to me from Phoenix. She was 79 years old. Her husband had transferred their home into a trust that gave her no ownership rights. I wrote back immediately. I told her about my case. I gave her resources. I connected her with an attorney in Phoenix that Janet knew. 6 months later, Gloria wrote to me again. She had hired an attorney. She had uncovered hidden accounts. Her case was moving forward. "I thought I was too old," she wrote. "You showed me I was not." I printed that email and kept it in my desk drawer. In June, a year after the court ruling, I did something I had been thinking about for months. I started a small consulting service for women going through property and estate disputes. Not legal consulting, I was clear about that, but practical consulting. How to organize documents, how to track down financial records, how to prepare for depositions, how to stay strong under pressure. I simply made myself available. Word spread. I started getting calls and emails from women and sometimes men who needed help navigating the overwhelming process of fighting for what was theirs. I helped them. I listened to their stories. I shared what I had learned. I reminded them that they were stronger than they thought. One afternoon in September, I was in my garden cutting dahlias when my phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Mom," she said, "I just heard from Dad's brother. Dad had a heart attack. He died yesterday in Florida." I sat down on the garden bench. I held the phone to my ear, and I do not know what I felt. Not grief exactly, not relief either. Something more complicated. "How do you feel?" Rebecca asked gently. "I am still figuring it out." Thomas had died alone in a rented apartment in Florida. He was 76 years old. His brother said he had not been taking care of himself, had not seen a doctor in years. The stress of the lawsuit and the financial losses had taken their toll. I did not go to the funeral. His brother arranged a small service in Florida. Rebecca went. Sophia did not. I did not ask her to. I stayed home. I worked in my garden. I thought about the man I had married 51 years earlier, about the good years before everything fell apart, about the children we had raised, about the life we had built, and the way he had tried to destroy it. I felt sad for him, not for his death specifically, but for the choices he had made, for the way he had thrown away decades of partnership for, what? For ego? For a sense of control? For a younger woman who had abandoned him the moment things got difficult. I felt sad that he had died alone and bitter and diminished. But I also felt grateful. Grateful that I had fought. Grateful that I had not let him erase me. Grateful that I was still here, still standing, still myself. The second autumn after the court ruling was the most peaceful autumn I had known in years. The leaves turned brilliant gold and red. The dahlias bloomed in deep burgundy and cream. I cut them every week and filled my house with color. I thought about everything I had been through, the betrayal, the fear, the fight, the victory, the rebuilding. I thought about the woman I had been 3 years earlier, the woman who had trusted without question, who had signed documents without reading them, who had believed that keeping peace was the same as being happy. That woman was gone. She had been necessary for a time, but she had outlived her usefulness. The woman I was now knew how to fight, knew how to stand up for herself, knew that gentleness and strength were not opposites. I was 76 years old. I owned my home free and clear. I had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I had my daughters and grandchildren close by. I had meaningful work helping other women find their own strength. I had lost the man I thought I had married, but I had found myself. And that trade, painful as it was, had been worth it. One evening in October, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when Marion called. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Sitting on my porch," I said. "In my house, watching the sunset over my garden." "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought about it. "Like coming home," I said. "You were always home," Marion said. "You just had to fight to stay there." She was right. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Now, as I sit here in my library, in my home, telling you this story, I want you to understand something. This is not just a story about a legal battle. This is not just a story about a bad marriage or a vindictive husband or a property dispute. This is a story about finding yourself when you thought you had disappeared. This is a story about discovering that you are stronger than you believed. This is a story about learning that it is never, never too late to stand up and fight for what is yours. Thomas believed that 51 years of gentleness meant I had nothing left. He believed that being quiet meant being weak. He believed he could take everything and I would simply accept it because that is what I had always done. He was wrong about all of it. Quiet people notice everything. We see, we remember, we document, and when we finally decide to speak, we have receipts. Gentle people are not weak. Gentleness is a choice. Kindness is a choice. But when those things are met with cruelty and betrayal, we can choose differently. And it is never too late. I was 74 years old when I started this fight. 74. People tried to tell me I was too old, that I should accept whatever settlement was offered, that I should be grateful for anything, that prolonged litigation was not appropriate for someone my age. They were wrong. Age is not a reason to surrender. Age is experience. Age is perspective. I had spent 7 decades learning how to solve problems. I used every bit of that knowledge to solve this one. If you are listening to this story and you are facing your own battle, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. You are more capable than you believe. And you deserve to fight for what is yours. Make your list. Start at 3:30 in the morning if you need to. Write down everything. Organize it. Understand your situation completely. Find your people. Find an attorney who believes in you. Find friends who will support you. Find family who will stand with you. You cannot do this alone. Do not try. Document everything. Every text message, every email, every conversation, every financial record, everything. The truth is in the details. Stay calm. They will try to make you emotional, so you will make mistakes. Do not give them that. Stay measured, stay precise, stay focused. And do not settle for less than you deserve. They will make you offers. They will try to convince you that fighting is too hard, too expensive, too risky. They will try to make you feel like you should be grateful for whatever crumbs they offer. Do not accept the crumbs. You deserve the whole meal. I lost faith in the man I trusted most. I did not lose faith in myself. That difference was everything. Thomas spent 51 years thinking he knew me. He thought he knew what I was capable of. He thought he had me categorized and understood and controlled. He did not know me at all. The woman who baked cookies and tended the garden was real, but she was not the complete picture. She was one part of a much larger, much stronger whole. When that woman needed to become a fighter, she did. When she needed to become strategic, she was. When she needed to stand in a courtroom and tell her truth without flinching, she rose to the occasion. I am still the woman who bakes cookies and tends the garden, but I am also the woman who fought a 3-year legal battle and won. Both of those things are true. Both of those things are me. To every woman listening who feels invisible, who feels powerless, who feels like she has disappeared into someone else's life, I want you to hear this. You are still there. You have not disappeared. You are just waiting to be called forward. Call yourself forward. Stand up. Make your list. Find your people. Fight. It will be hard. It will be scary. There will be moments when you want to give up, when the pressure feels like too much, when the fear threatens to overwhelm you. Fight anyway, because on the other side of that fear is your life, your real life, the one you deserve, the one you have earned, the one that belongs to you and no one else. Do not let anyone take that from you. Not a husband, not a partner, not a family member, not anyone. Your life is yours. Your home is yours. Your dignity is yours. Your strength is yours. Fight for it. I did, and I won. And I'm here to tell you that you can too. Quiet is not surrender. Old is not powerless. And your voice, no matter how soft it has been for how many years, still has power. Use it. Stand up. Make your list. Take the first step. Your life is waiting for you to claim it. Thank you for listening to my story today. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you. I hope my words have reached you wherever you are. I hope they have given you strength if you need it. I hope they have shown you that it is never too late to fight for yourself. Remember, we are building a community here, a community of women who refuse to disappear, who refuse to be erased, who stand up and fight for what is theirs. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Until next time, dear listeners, this is Vivian. Take care of yourselves. Be strong, be brave, and never, never give up on yourself. Your life belongs to you.